Hey, it's Dave Brown here, host of Now with Dave Brown on AMI. Check out this latest highlight from the show. Disability Employment Awareness Month rolls on. You are deeply aware that people with disabilities are underrepresented in the workforce. Companies are trying to correct that with more inclusive hiring. But maybe you don't want to work for someone else. Maybe you want to work for yourself. Rabia Khedr is the National Director for Disability Without Poverty. Rabia has thoughts on more people with disabilities becoming entrepreneurs. Hey, good morning, Rabia. How are you?
Good morning, Dave. I'm great.
Nice to chat with you once again. Really interesting topic in the context of Disability Employment Awareness Month. Why do you think entrepreneurship is a good option for someone with a disability?
Well, people with disabilities are still vastly unemployed or underemployed. And, in a competitive workplace, depending on the types of barriers they face, they run into many, many, many obstacles because, although we have all these employment programs, we don't really get that creative at accommodating disabled people so that they can be fully productive and contributing. Everybody wants to contribute. Everybody wants to be productive and earn. Unfortunately, we've designed society for able-bodied people, and hence we've designed jobs for able-bodied people. So entrepreneurship helps overcome some of those barriers because I, as a person with a disability, am in control. I'm the boss.
I love the idea of control and being able to identify the barriers that you want to address directly. But it doesn't mean there aren't still barriers in actually starting your own business. So what are some of the barriers that might prevent someone with a disability from getting their business off the ground or getting started?
Well, again, when it comes to employment, we have lots of services that help people, fix up their resume, get out there and get some interviews happening. They get some job coaching happening. Maybe there are employment subsidies offered to employers to hire someone with a disability. So there's a lot more support to seek out a job in government, in the corporate sector, and within that whole landscape of employers. However, when it comes to self-employment, if you don't know how to start a business, there isn't necessarily accessible information or opportunities out there for you to learn. You need help and support in gaining some self-employment skills. There aren't any programs necessarily, or they're far and few between. And again, money. You need a loan. You need, you need financial support to start a business. And as a person with a disability, especially if you're living in poverty, you don't have assets as collateral to get a loan, for example.
Right. I was thinking about that too, Rabia, because I was thinking about the accounting and the bureaucracy, getting a loan, opening a corporate bank account, even things like designing your own website. Listen, it's getting better. WordPress is making it easier to design a website at a low cost. There are things like Shopify to build e-commerce sites, but none of these things are guaranteed easy. There's a huge learning curve on every single one of them, and if you're going to work for yourself, then you have to address that learning curve libre solo, just by yourself.
Yes, you have to address it by yourself, but you also have to know what you need, right? So, I always resort to storytelling, Dave. So let me just talk about me. End of 2001, I had enough of working for someone else because I did not feel that what I was doing was really contributing to what I wanted to see in the world. I was working for actually an employment agency supporting people with disabilities, and I felt like we really weren't addressing the supports that people needed. So I had a lot going on in my life. I was a person with a disability. I faced barriers to transportation. I needed some supports at work. Even though this was a disability service provider, I just didn't quite feel supported. I had other, lived experience challenges. I had siblings with disabilities, with intellectual disabilities, having stuff go on, and I need to support my family. I also had young children, and I just up and quit my job one day. I was lucky, my husband worked in IT. He had a steady job, so I could afford to take that chance a little bit. But I quit my job and I said, I'm going to do this on my own. I'm going to consult. I started to consult. And, I describe myself as a social entrepreneur these days because I also saw gaps and I decided to set up organizations to address those gaps. And, after setting up some nonprofits in 2013, I established a registered charity called Dean Support Services, which is fully operational now, that I'm also the CEO of. And I have a number of people with disabilities and without disabilities that work for me, and we offer programs and services for disabled people. And one of the areas we want to look at in the future is entrepreneurship, because so many of the folks that we support with vision loss, with physical disabilities, with intellectual disabilities, face barriers to employment, cannot work full-time or in a competitive work environment. So we're looking at what kind of social enterprise or social purpose business can we set up that can help them develop skills, give them some, opportunity to have shared ownership, a bigger stake in the business rather than just being an employee, and allow them to fully contribute to the best of their abilities.
Rabia, you said something interesting there in terms of the diversity of businesses that you created over time. What kind of questions should an aspiring entrepreneur ask themselves in regard to the kind of business they want to create, whether that be social enterprise, a not-for-profit, or maybe even just a regular old corporation?
Well, first off, they need to find their passion. What are they passionate about? What can they do? Who's around them that can help them? What kind of skills and supports will they need? Do they want to be selling products online? Do they want to, establish a coffee shop? What is it that they exactly want to do? They need to figure out what kind of skills they have, what kind of business they want to run. And, a coffee shop can be just an old-fashioned storefront business, or it could be a nonprofit coffee shop, and that way, whatever money is made is spent within the business to hire people to improve products. It could be, also a marketing sort of twist, right? That you're nonprofit, people want to support you. It could be a social enterprise, which, makes profit and again shares that profit amongst the people it supports, and invests into the supports needed to really offer a wholesome employment experience, a fulsome employment experience in which disabled people are equally contributing and equally benefiting.
Along those lines, let's say somebody chooses not-for-profit or something that's a little more social enterprise oriented. How hard is it for an entrepreneur to set boundaries, whether that be time management, commitment to a bunch of people, or even how much they might charge for their own services or product?
Well, a nonprofit mindset is terrible, Dave. Like, I have worked in nonprofit, and I end up, being asked to speak at events and things like that. And I know people charge like big bucks to do those things, right? I have a hard time negotiating those numbers because I'm a bleeding heart nonprofit, right? So my mindset isn't always geared toward, competition and big bucks. So, I've had to learn over the years to say, hey, whatever you will pay a white able-bodied man, you can pay me as a racialized disabled woman. But essentially you do end up working 24 hours a day, round the clock, because it becomes your baby. Like Dean Support Services is my baby. Disability Without Poverty is my and my colleagues' baby. We nurture, even though, we're contracted to support the organization, we've been involved from inception, we live, eat, and breathe the issues because they impact us. So we give it our all. And that's what contributes to success. If you cannot give it your all, if you cannot contribute, 24/7 to the success of your entrepreneurial aspirations, it's very hard to succeed.
Rabia, I don't mean to get you in trouble here, because I know all of a sudden it can turn into the naming game and we're leaving people out. That's actually why I'm going to sit this question out, because I've done so many stories over the years about entrepreneurs with disabilities that if I start shouting out one or two, I'm going to get loads of hate mail coming my way after the show. But who are some entrepreneurs with disabilities that you want to shout out? You work so closely in this industry, in this business.
I mean, there's lots of people working on their own, right? There are, and I'm not going to name them either, Dave.
Okay, yeah. We don't want to make any enemies.
We don't want to make any enemies. I mean, somebody that I don't know that I hear a lot about because of the awards that she's won and the recognitions is Mayan Ziv for her entrepreneurial initiative. But also there are lots of social enterprise cafes, cleaning businesses, little bake shops and stuff that have popped up, all across the country in different places to support people with disabilities to have meaningful employment opportunities or earn livelihoods, for folks with mental health issues, for folks with developmental disabilities. Often these efforts are made, and there are successful businesses out there.
Rabia, that was so diplomatically done. Very, very well done by you across the board. Rabia, thank you for this. Have a lovely day. Thank you for bringing this topic to the table.
You too. Thanks, Dave.
Do you want to dive into more conversations like this? Watch Now with Dave Brown weekdays at 9 a.m. Eastern on AMI-TV or download the podcasts wherever you listen. Do you want to dive into more conversations like this? Watch Now with Dave Brown weekdays at 9 a.m. Eastern on AMI-TV or download the podcasts wherever you listen.